Hello, everybody. Gabe Zoda here with special guest today, Ian Eagle Nets broadcaster for Yes, and also CBS broadcaster for the NFL. Happy holiday season, Ian. How's everything going?
Yeah, doing well, Gabe. Good to be with you once again. And this is a fun time of year. You got a crossover and all these different sports coming together. NFL season, as we know, is getting into the real treacherous time for teams trying to make the playoffs, others solidifying their spots. And we're getting a sense, NBA, college hoops, where teams stand. So always good when the new year hits. And then you got even better stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, this is personally my favorite time of the year with, as you mentioned, all the sports crossover. Let's start off in the NBA with the Brooklyn Nets, a team that a lot of youth on this team, a lot of fun stories. The success of the season's kind of up and down, but I
Yep.
want to get your take kind of holistically about this Brooklyn Nets team before we get into the stories.
Yeah, I think the general theme from early in the year was good chemistry. Guys like playing with one another. Cohesion was even better than anticipated. And then the rigors of the NBA season hit. You hit a West Coast trip, you go 1-4, and now you start beginning to question all the things that you saw for the first 20 plus games of the year. What I'm struck with, which I see it every year, not just in the NBA, but other sports. Chemistry is so tenuous. When things are going well and things are clicking, you can feel that form right before your eyes. But when you face some adversity and you're dealing with losses, how does the team respond? And right now, that's where the Nets are. They're a team that's played really hard. I think they did surprise some people early in the year, and their depth has been tested. And now we're going to see what they're all about. If they come out the other side of this, hitting the new year, hovering around 500, staying in that 8, 9, 10 range in the Eastern Conference. And then you start asking larger questions. Is there a trade? Is there a move? Are they buyers? Are they sellers? We're not at that stage yet, but I think they're still in the evaluation phase of what exactly they have on their hands.
And we look at their number one scorer right now in Cam Thomas coming in. Everyone knew that he could score the
Yep.
basketball. Everyone knew that, kind of looking for that defensive side, which kind of sparks questions about late game kind of situations for the Nets. But what have you seen from Cam Thomas developmentally this season?
More responsibility. Obviously, last year he was a bit player with the combination of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the team. So it was a lot of him watching, observing, taking it in via osmosis, learning from those two guys. And by his own admission, he learned a lot from both of them, how to prepare, how to be a pro, how to get your body ready. He's only in his third year. He's 21 years old. We tend to forget that because of the way things work. We want results right away. This is how it works in sports in general. The next step is when you show up on the opponent's scouting report and you're the one that they're locked in on trying to stop. How do you adjust? Cam has a lot of things in his repertoire. So I don't think scoring's ever going to be an issue. I think this guy can truly average 25 points per game in the NBA. That's not a simple thing to just snap your fingers and get a 25 or 27, 28 point per game score. A facilitator. Can he make teammates better? Can he fit in? Can these big performances translate into wins? That's really the next step. There are always going to be guys that can score in the NBA. Every team has a scorer. Even if you're a sub 500 team, you've got someone that puts up points. Someone has to score when you're putting up 110, 112 points. The question is, can you be a scorer on a really good team? And that's the next step in the development of Cam Thomas, trying to figure out exactly what kind of player he's going to be in the NBA. But if you're just asking me, is this guy a legitimate lethal scorer in this league? The answer is yes. He's going to be able to do that for a number of years to come.
Yeah, I remember watching him when he was playing in Long Island or on Long Island, and the scoring numbers 40 a night.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone knew the scoring was there. He's replicating the same thing in the NBA. So it's definitely something that you don't even have to ask about. I want to ask you about one player, though, a player that hasn't really been able to get too much games in this season. And that's Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, obviously a player. Everyone knows his defense, but I'm not even going to ask about his on the court play because everyone can see that. I want to ask you about the off the court things because it seems like he's still really active in the team and really wants to be a part of this core.
I think he's trying to do all the right things. He's trying to be a part of this Nets culture and team. He recognizes that management went out of their way to set everything up for him to succeed. But the body is not complying. And this has been a legitimate issue for him, staying on the court. That would obviously change the whole complexion of this Nets team if Ben Simmons was a part of it. If you could count on him game in and game out, it changes literally the positions that are being played on the floor. Spencer Dinwiddie would not be the point guard right now. Ben Simmons would be the point guard, and Dinwiddie would be off the ball. You might see an entirely different second unit based on what the team needs as part of the second unit. And then also defensively, we've seen their rating drop as the season has gone on. This West Coast trip really exposed the defense. They gave up 70 points or more in a half 3 times on a 5-game trip. You know, that's supposed to happen once a year, maybe twice a year. When you give it up 3 times on a 5-game Western swing, that means teams are really taking advantage of you in that department. So it's affected so many different areas of their team. And look, there's no getting around it. It affects morale when you can't count on someone and you don't know if or when they're going to be back. I think the team has handled it well. I think Ben is trying to do all the right things to get back, but it's a tricky subject with the nerve impingement in his back. It was originally a hip issue. This has been a common recurring theme for him, and it's hard to really judge this team without knowing if he's going to be a part of it. I think part of the mentality now is you have to just proceed as if he's not going to be a part of it. And if he is, that's going to be an added bonus.
So what do you think the key to the defense is to this team, though, if they have to move on and set their sights onto a life without Ben Simmons on the court?
Well, what they've been doing is more of a drop defense, and they may have to change philosophically what they're going to do in some of these matchups. Teams have absolutely looked at that as a way in which to attack them. Now, if you can handle it the right way, and if you're playing it at a high level, it can be highly effective. We have not seen them play any zone. They're not a zone team right now. It may come to that. It may require them to make some serious adjustments to their general approach to defense. I think they felt that they were a really good individual defensive team, meaning Mikal Bridges would guard his position, Nick Claxton would guard his position, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, so on and so forth. But because of the style of defense that they're playing, it's not a switching defense. That's where Claxton was really comfortable. He loved the challenge of a big switching out with a point guard or a 2 guard, and then taking on that smaller player and using it as fuel. That's not what's happening here. They're not approaching it that way. If the numbers continue to drop, if teams are gouging them like we've seen of late, it might force their hand in what they decide to do defensively.
Yeah, I remember Nick Claxton always on the switch, and everyone would gladly take it because he used that, as you mentioned, to his advantage to really get things going. So we'll continue to log the Nets situation as the season goes on, but I want to switch focus now to the NFL, and what a crazy NFL season it's been. The year of backup quarterbacks, it's seeming to look at, and we look all across these bubble teams. I want to get your take on a game that you'll be covering this weekend in the Browns and the Texans. That's a game in which you look at backup quarterbacks, both team has them, and both teams really need this win.
They do. And the way that things are set up right now in the AFC, the margin of error is pretty slim because it's bunched together. Cleveland's in a great position right now with the lead spot in the wild card. They found a little something with Joe Flacco. Pretty amazing when you think of it, because Joe Flacco came into this league as a first round pick out of Delaware. I'm not sure people were buying in initially that you could win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. Well, they did. They won a Super Bowl. They had a great defense, but Flacco had an incredible postseason run, if you recall. And that changed things for him. He got the huge contract. He was seen differently, viewed differently. And I think as the last few years showed with Joe, it felt like he was just hanging on. He was with Denver. He had a terrible neck injury. He was with the Jets as a backup, had a couple of spot starts there and lit up the scoreboard in one particular game that gave Jets fans something to cheer about. But he was on his couch. And I don't mean that as a figure of speech. He told us literally he was watching the games at his parents' house with his wife and kids. He got the YouTube package. This is where his life was. This wasn't just 2 weeks. This was more than half the season. He didn't sign until I think he had the tryout, the workout week 10, and then eventually signed week 11, and then ended up starting week 12, 13, 14, 15. And amazingly enough, the guy's winning. And what he has done has been nothing short of amazing. The jolt that he has given the Cleveland Browns. Are on their fourth quarterback. I think even the Browns were starting to lose hope that they could be a serious factor. And who knows, maybe the clock strikes midnight for Cleveland and this doesn't necessarily end the way that they would like. But the fact that they're playing meaningful games in December with a chance to maybe solidify their playoff position is a pretty large achievement.
I think one of the biggest factors and the help has been the defense. The defense all throughout the year was good all throughout the quarterback drama. And then it seemed to maybe be starting to die off a little bit. But now with Joe Flacco keeping the defense off of the field for a longer period of time via offense, I mean, this defense seems reinvigorated as well, right?
Yeah, it's a great point, Gabe. I think the one thing you have to look at for whatever reason, this is just how it is in the NFL, but in particular, Cleveland has been the prototype for this. Their numbers at home compared to their numbers on the road, so different and strikingly so. So they still have to go on the road. Yes, it's a backup quarterback. It's Case Keenum. He's a 12-year veteran. He used to play for the Browns. In fact, he won a couple of games as the starting quarterback for the Browns in spot duty for Baker Mayfield. So there's a respect level there, but they have not played well on the road. They went out to Denver, couldn't handle it. Went out to LA with the Rams, couldn't handle it. And now they go back out on the road against Houston and a team that is highly motivated, playing without CJ Stroud, Tank Dell done for the year. Can Case Keenum summon his youth again, like he did last week? He played well against Tennessee. They get a Fairbairn 54-yard field goal to win it. And Houston is in position now to maybe not just make the playoffs, win the division. Jacksonville has stumbled. Jaguars have all the tiebreakers against Indianapolis and Houston, but you still got to win games. There's 3 weeks left in the year. I give a great deal of credit to DeMeco Ryans and the job that he's done with the Texans. First-year head coach. He's just got his finger on the pulse. He's got a really good way with the players. He's got a very high standard after his days as a player and as defensive coordinator for the 49ers. And they'll be ready. They'll be prepared. Whether or not they can actually replicate what they did last week and generate enough offense, that remains to be seen. But I think Houston is ahead of the scale right now. Everybody assumed it would take a little time for Stroud and these young players to develop, and they have been so far above what was expected. It's one of the better storylines in the league.
Another, you mentioned coaching with the Texans. I want to move on to the Bills, who had their kind of coaching drama early on in the season as well.
Yep.
But Now the Bills are starting to come on a little bit stronger towards the end of this season. Just won that big game against the Cowboys, who, as well as the Browns, do struggle away from Jerry Dome or Jerry World. But the Bills as well, they're really fighting. They're on that bubble spot as well. And the end of their schedule, it doesn't get easier for them, but you're starting to see that life from the Bills as well.
Yeah, that's a team I would not want to play. If I'm in the AFC and the playoff bracket comes out, I'm hoping Buffalo's on the other side of the bracket. And that's what's interesting about sports in general, but the NFL. There's a window of opportunity in this league. And Cincinnati was within that window the last couple of years. A bounce of the ball here, a penalty called there. Maybe the Bengals have a championship and not Kansas City. But that's not what happened. Kansas City's got 2 titles and they're hoping for another. Buffalo's window of opportunity, we felt very strongly, was any of the last couple of years. And they either ran into Mahomes or Burrow. So you mentioned the coaching drama from earlier this season. Ken Dorsey replaced as offensive coordinator. Don't forget, their defensive coordinator left the team, Leslie Frazier, during the offseason. We don't really know the story behind it. And Sean McDermott assumed the play calling duties on defense, like he used to do in Carolina and Philadelphia prior to that as a defensive coordinator. So that's a DC and an OC that are no longer with the team, at least as of now. Maybe Leslie Frazier comes back down the road. I don't know. He's not coaching for anybody, but he just decided to step away from the game. What they've done, in my eyes, in this last stretch, they've gotten back to their bread and butter. And that's Josh Allen being a two-way, dangerous player with his legs, taking some chances, taking some risks, not making him your typical pocket passer. And it's opened up the offense again. And yeah, the defense has gotten its legs under themselves. Once again, they've dealt with a bunch of injuries themselves, losing Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White, among others. So go figure. The year that we didn't necessarily expect the Buffalo Bills to maybe bust through and be a Super Bowl team, who knows? Maybe they get enough momentum to really be a factor in January and, dare I say, February. I think they're really dangerous right now. Obviously, you got to get in. That's first and foremost. But if they get in, that's a team that could rip off a bunch of wins.
I want to look at one more kind of sleeper storyline before I have to get into a team that I kind of have to talk about. I want to talk about the Buccaneers, excuse me. Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield has had a season that people are really starting to turn their heads on to now, it seems, with all the numbers he's having. But Baker Mayfield guy bounced around the league a couple times. People are starting to lose faith in him, saying that he wasn't a quarterback that could win anymore. Now with the Buccaneers in a playoff hunt to be in that spot, I mean, what have you made of Baker Mayfield and that Buccaneers team?
I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. Met with him a number of times when he was the quarterback in Cleveland, had a game last year when he was the quarterback in Carolina, had a game this year, Buccaneers Texans, where they were oh so close to getting the win, and CJ Stroud works his magic down the stretch and they get the W. I just think he performs his best when his back is against the wall. When everybody is saying this guy can't be a starter, he shouldn't be in the league, you can't win with him, he finds a way. He's one of those types of competitors. And I think he's highly popular in whatever locker room he goes into, because players can see that. They see the fight, they see the ability to connect, which he does have with his teammates, and they see a football IQ that is high. He's not the biggest guy. You meet him in person, you're like, okay, wow, that's pretty impressive. Drew Brees comes to mind, Russell Wilson. These are not imposing figures. There are a number of quarterbacks in the NFL, when they walk in the room, you do a double take, like, man, I can't believe it. This dude is legitimately 6'5" and strapping. So I just think Baker, he hears a lot. I think he takes it all in, and then he just creates a huge boulder on his shoulder to prove people wrong. He's He's definitely opened some eyes around the league, but most specifically in Tampa when they have to make a determination moving forward whether or not they're going to continue in this relationship with Baker Mayfield and sign him to a legitimate deal to be their quarterback.
Now, do you think a fair comparison for him is kind of just recently is like a Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of guy? A guy's going to bounce around maybe sometimes and win games for teams?
I don't know. That's such an extreme. You have to remember Baker was the number one overall pick. He won the Heisman Trophy. There was fanfare. And I would tell you that, Baker's arm talent is probably better than Ryan's. Ryan maximized what he had, but Ryan embraced the journeyman mentality and also brought a certain level of confidence and intellect to every situation that he was dropped into. And often, if you remember with Ryan, he wasn't necessarily taking jobs as the starter. He was taking jobs to compete or as a backup, and then someone goes down. And then he comes in and you're like, whoa, he can do it. He can run the offense. Well, what's interesting to me, Gabe, and I think this year in particular, just based on all the quarterbacks that have gone down, big name quarterbacks that have missed extended periods of time, the life of a backup quarterback is a treacherous one because it's a great job. Let's face it. If you're a backup quarterback on a really good team and the starter is one of the big name starters and he doesn't get hurt, what's your job? Your job is to prepare and to support and to be in the meetings and to be a good teammate and get a couple reps occasionally in practice, maybe work with the scout team. But it's a pretty good gig. For some guys, they're making multiple millions of dollars to do this job. Here's the caveat. If you have to actually play, the starter goes down, and the expectations for your team are still high. The team's not just dismissing the season. They still paid their running back a lot of money, their wide receiver, their starting tackles, their pass rushing specialists, their number one corner. These guys are getting paid big money. So if you're a backup and you're asked to start and you don't win games, well, now your position is vulnerable moving forward because the team learned that they can't win with you. So there have been a bunch of quarterbacks in the NFL that have lasted 10 plus years as a backup quarterback, making millions of dollars. Some guys that have banked 30, 40, 50, 60 million bucks that never had to actually play. And they benefited from that because they were never exposed as someone that couldn't win at this level.
Yeah, I look at one of the backup quarterbacks this year has really been able to put on a guy that was in that position where you didn't think he was ever going to touch the field, and then he has to come in and has done well as Browning over in Cincinnati. Now he's a guy that everyone's talking about. Now he has a tough matchup against Pittsburgh. That defense is always treacherous without Jamar Chase. That's a game that everyone's looking at. But Browning has shown that he could really be a quarterback that can win you a lot of these games. I want to talk about, and then I'll leave you on this. I have to talk about the New York Jets because if I didn't, then a lot of people over at my studio would get mad at me. So I'm not going to. Have to talk about the Jets. Obviously, their quarterback carousel has been one that's been well documented all over the sports media world. I want to get your take, though, just on this whole carousel, the media swirl, what it's done for the team, and kind of what's been the Jets' quarterback situation this season.
Yeah, this is not what they envisioned. Obviously, when they went out to get Aaron Rodgers, they thought, okay, finally, they've got the credibility. They feel like they've checked a lot of boxes at other positions and that Aaron was going to provide the impetus to finally break this postseason drought. Well, 4 plays in to his first year with the Jets, that dream became a nightmare. And we know how it's unfolded since that point, up and down with Zach Wilson, some flashes here, but a lot of down moments. Now the concussion and the fact that Tim Boyle couldn't get it done and Trevor Siemian now is going to get a chance. And look, it reminds you that this is the most important position in sports. I'm not downplaying any other position in any other sport. I just know that the quarterback position has the most responsibility and it has the most direct effect on winning. in any of these sports. It just does. It's just how it's set up. If you're not covered in that position, then you're not going to win. You mentioned Jake Browning. Had a chance to meet with him a few weeks ago, right before his first start, after Burrow went down with a wrist injury. And he's a smart guy. He said in our meeting, like, hey, I'm not going to avoid the elephant in the room. I get it. I'm aware that if I do well, this is going to set me up in my life, whether it's here or somewhere else. People are going to see I can win in the NFL. He had a lot of confidence, and I respect his whole approach. After sitting and after considering going into coaching because he wasn't getting any bites, he gotten cut from the practice squad with Minnesota. He got a late call from Cincinnati. He ends up making the team and now obviously is leading the team. The Jet situation was just murkier. And, unfortunately for them, the setup didn't lead to success. What does that mean for 2024? If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, do they feel good about running it back with the same personnel, the same coaching staff, the same management team? Probably, because this year you get an incomplete grade. How can you grade it when everything was based on having Aaron Rodgers lead them week in, week out, and take on a lot of the responsibility and pressure that comes with playing in New York, trying to end this playoff drought, and obviously the Jets, just what comes with being a Jet. So disappointment, I think frustration. My sense is they're going to go full speed ahead in 2024 with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, and most of the players that you see in this position have to get better on the offensive line. That goes without saying. That's something that will need to be addressed. And there are some other areas that they're going to have to improve upon, but I think they're going to stay on the course, is my sense.
Now, we talked about a bunch of stuff in the NFL. Before I let you go, just want to ask you if there's any other storylines that we didn't cover and you think are pretty interesting to talk about.
Well, just NFL wise, I happened to do San Francisco, Arizona last week. And when you see a team in person and you see what they're capable of, it can resonate with you even more so than watching a team on TV. And I think the 49ers are the real deal. If they can keep everybody healthy, that's a huge if, as we know in the NFL. But if they can, I think they're the most balanced team in the league. They're going to have home field advantage if they take care of business. That's going to benefit them greatly. And I think they just have a lot of good vibrations going into this postseason. Their head coach is seeing things very clearly. Obviously, they believe in Brock Purdy, and he's given them reason to believe. He passes every test that's thrown his way. So I have to at least acknowledge, when you see a team like that in person, when you meet with them, when you get a feel for who they're all about, you should share it with others. And I think San Francisco is legit.
Once again, Ian Eagle with us. Just wanted to say thank you once again for hopping on. And once again, a happy holidays to you.
All right, Gabe, all the best. We'll do it again, man.